Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's WEConnect International webinar. My name is Maggie Berry, and I am the Executive Director for WEConnect International here in Europe, and I'm delighted that you've joined us for today's webinar, How Wording in Job Ads Determines Who You Attract. Our presenters today are Nadia Fischer and Lukas Kahwe-Smith from Witty Works. They're a WEConnect International certified women's business enterprise based in Switzerland, and their mission is to crack the code around the crucial representation of women in tech and digital teams in order to create technology by all and for all. This is a topic that is close to my heart for those of you who know about the work that I did around women in tech before joining WEConnect. So I'm delighted to have them with us today. We're going to be learning about how powerful language is and how the way you write a job ad actually determines who is invited to apply for your position. To keep background noise to minimum, please keep yourself on mute and use the chat functionality if you have any questions that you would like to ask, and there will be time for Q&A at the end. Nadia and Lukas are probably going to talk for about 40 to 45 minutes. The session is being recorded, so you will be able to listen back to it again. And all it really remains for me to say, Nadia and Lukas, thank you very much for presenting for us today. Nadia, I'm going to make you the presenter, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay, I quickly wanted to say hi by video if you see me now. Hello. Hello from Switzerland. Yeah, great. Thanks for having us. That's really nice. And so let's start. So how wording in job ads determines who you attract. And I maybe first want to come to this man here. He is the CEO of Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein. And he's actually was at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and Goldman Sachs publicly has announced that they will no longer take any company public, either in the US or Europe, if it lacks a director who is either female or has a diverse background. So being transgender, homosexual, or of any other skin color or whatever, different religion. And this really kind of made the big statement, hey, diversity today is a business imperative. On the other hand, PwC does survey every year to the biggest, to the CEOs of these companies that are on stock. And the biggest worry of CEOs has changed. And in 2019, the lack of skilled labor, the shortage of skilled labor has become the third most important worry of the CEOs. So it seems really one of the top topics, not now. Naturally, at the moment, the pandemic is is at the top, but as soon as this calms down, shortage of skilled labor will be again a top topic for every company, at least in Europe, if not worldwide. And what does that mean now for companies? And here we go into this here. The job ad is really the first thing any of your potential talents see. Either it's the career page or the job ad. And so the job ad really becomes the window to your company, and that's why we need to take special care about it. So I give over to Lukas for the next part. Let me see, I find him. Yes, just a second, because we have to switch presenters. Yeah, but this, oh, sorry, Maggie, that doesn't work. Lukas, go ahead and I'll flip for you the page.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so yeah, hello as well. So let me continue on with what Nadia was saying. So can you go to the next slide?
Now I can't anymore. Sorry, can you now?
I guess I can, yes.
Okay, so it was delayed.
It was going in the wrong direction, so here we go. Okay, why language is not neutral. And this is really one of the key aspects that we want to bring home with this talk, is that by the language choices we make today, we actually tailor our communication towards a much smaller talent pool than we think we are. And the root cause of most of this is what is called unconscious bias. And this is one of the main factors that leads us to non-neutral language. So if you look at this image, we might think, okay, so we have you know, a silhouette of a person here, and they're in different sizes. In fact, however, if we remove the lines, we start to see that these persons are actually the same size. And if you put them next to each other, they are the same size. And what I want to bring home with this small example is just to illustrate that our mind sometimes plays us tricks. The human mind sort of tries to simplify the reality sometimes by interpolating patterns. And most of the times that's quite useful, but sometimes this can lead us astray and give us a false perception of reality. And so with this little riddle, I'll just read it to everyone. So a father and his son drive together in the car and have a horrible car accident. The father is dead immediately. The son is driven to the hospital with blue lights and immediately brought to the surgery room. A nurse takes a quick look at him and calls the specialist. The specialist comes, sees the young man on the surgery table and says, "I cannot do surgery on this boy." Now, let's briefly think who is speaking in that last sentence in the story above. I think many will lean to or actually be confused because they're thinking, well, but the father unfortunately died, so who's speaking? And very few people will immediately come to the conclusion that it's most likely the mother or that is speaking in this case. And this is really just illustrating that we tend to have stereotypes about who we see in specific roles. And that, again, can lead us to phrase our job ads in a specific way where we just sort of look for the stereotypical person to fill this specific role.
Mm-hmm. And maybe to add here, I mean, who would have thought, if you read as well the word nurse, who inside of your inner image had a man in front of you? I guess most of you also thought about a woman, just like me, because we know nurses are mostly today still women, right? Good. I take over from here. And now I can change again. Thank you. So yes, when we have these different biases in languages, I want to show you here typical examples. So analytical, specialist, manager, ambitious, and lead are all, as we call them, male-coded words, meaning that they particularly attract men and not so much women. Actually, women are deterred by these words. Why is that? Is that we've been socialized during our lifetime already for a long, for several generations, but even in our own lifetime, very small, when we were about 2 years old, this all started. And typically, for example, analytical is a word that is seen in the STEM world. It belongs to the STEM world, so science, mathematics, and technology. And typically, girls, on the other hand, they were not really socialized with STEM fields. They were rather socialized with you take care of something, you cooperate, you collaborate with the others. And boys are much more socialized when they were young about, you know something about math, these technical things. And all these other words is the same thing, like also competition as it is expressed with the word ambitious. You tell boys on the playground to go and try it and, run against your colleague, your friend, try to be faster. And the girls are rather taught to be playing with dolls with their girlfriends, and rather collaborating and taking care of these dolls. The same is with leadership. This is also male-coded. We think that leadership is something that rather belongs to the male world than to the female world, just because we were so socialized this way. So typically, bias really has an influence on how we use language and especially how we interpret language. So women interpret language much differently than from men. Language is not neutral, and even in English, which is more neutral than German and more neutral than French. I mean, in German and French it's even worse. But even though we think that English is actually quite neutral, it is not, because of our biases that we carry with us. And to show you an example, I made a little Google research for risk manager and see what images here came up. Most of these images either have men on them, or they use colors that actually are much more attractive for men. So typically also colors is also, we have also bias in colors. Dark colors, blue and black, are male-coded colors, and as soon as we go into light colors, light green, light pink naturally, these are female-coded colors. And you would see here that, you would think here that, well, Google, in their Google algorithm, search algorithm that they have, an algorithm cannot have bias. And that is actually not true. Yes, the algorithm itself probably not, but the algorithm only repeats what is out there in the world, and thus repeats and even amplifies this bias, as we see with this typical search result here. The big thing here is really that bias is in language and bias is also in images. And just to say this again, this is how we are socialized, right? And even today, many kids are still socialized today. I think a lot of adults that know about that subject, they try to counter socialize or to be more gender neutral in the way they educate their children. But it still happens. But even if it still happens, what we need to understand is that today companies can do something against it when it comes to job ads, and they can do something against it now. They don't have to wait. They shouldn't have the excuse to say, oh, we'll just wait until, you know, all these social biases have changed. No, because that's going to take probably another 100 years. So, but they can act now. And what I want you to understand from this presentation is really, if you have a brain, then you are biased. We are all biased. Everybody is. There is no exceptions. And bias is really important in order to survive, right? You can, you shouldn't get rid of biases. It makes us, for example, much more safe in traffic. So when we hear a car arriving very fast, we don't walk into the street, and that is actually because of bias, because we bias to interpret noise of a car that is very loud to be a danger for us. So it really helps us to save our lives. But when it comes to recruitment, bias unfortunately has negative consequences. So I give back to Lukas. Yeah, Nadia, I think you have to do it because I can't. Lukas, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So let's move on to why there is bias in job wording, or more specifically, what is the effect of biased words in job ads. So if you look at what Nadia was talking about, male-coded language, this is actually what is predominantly used in job ads. So 70% of all job ads, regardless of field, are heavily male-coded. And in STEM, it's even worse, where it's 92% of all job ads are heavily male-coded, which in turn means that companies are only attracting a fraction of the talent pool. Now, what is key here is that actually using neutral language gives you just an opportunity to attract additional applicants. Studies have shown that it doesn't reduce the number of men that are interested in the job ads. It just adds a whole new talent pool on top. So if you with a traditional job ad, you might get 12 applicants. And we've seen with working with customers that if they change the wording in their job ads to be neutral, they simply get an additional 5 applicants from a more diverse background. So that's an increase of 40%. Now, we've seen actually some cases in a large Swiss insurer, and we worked very closely with them, that they actually managed to get 66% increase, and another Swiss startup, actually, they managed to double their applicants. So So 42% is, already a huge jump, and basically means you have a whole or a much bigger choice of candidates to look at. So what has to change? With that, I hand over to Nadia back. So let me see. I managed. Okay. Here we go.
Thanks. Yes, so there's two sorts of changes. There's the vertical change and there's the horizontal change you can do when it comes to job ads. So first about the vertical change. This is really how do you write your job ad? And there are three things in here. So young people or women, they interpret the structure of your job ad very differently. You see on the right here, this is normal. You have to put up the more or less normal structure or how we see it often written of a traditional job ad. So you first, talk about the company, then about the role, then you put out the requirements, then maybe the benefits, and in the end, the contact wherever the applicant has to send his or her application to. What we've seen and what we've studied with our focus group is what they expect is a little bit of a different structure. And we've also have this confirmed by Indeed, the job platform. That actually what you need to do first is to talk about the role. And it really has to be a contextual explanation of the role, meaning really so that the person reading that can totally identify or imagine herself or himself directly what it means to work at your company. What are the daily tasks? So important also is when you describe such a role, you shouldn't write any requirements already in the role description. It should be really neutral, talking about the role. In the requirements, then the second position we would talk about the requirements. And there it is really, really important that you are putting out these requirements on an eye level, meaning it's much more better to say, hey, if you are welcome to work with us if you like such and such with regards to the role, than saying you need to have this and you need to have this and you need to have this, because that is not on eye level more. I hope you understand what I mean. It really important is also not to talk only about hard skills, but also about interpersonal skills, because interpersonal skills is really something that is very female coded, and so don't forget about those. When you talk, then the third part in the structure would be the company, and here it's important that you don't use boasting language. Boasting language is really about we are the number one, or we are the leading company in the UK or whatever, right? Just use normal language, like you would explain your company to a friend of yours. And then comes here something, and that's to read about the company culture. Company culture should be described in the job ad. And this is really something we have heard now from many female talents. Once they've actually checked the role and think they can be competent in that role, the next thing they do is they check the company culture and the managerial style of the company. They either do this already in the job ad if it's described, or they go onto your website, onto the career page and check that. Because women want to make sure, and people with diverse backgrounds in general, they want to be sure that they can make an impact in your company. And that highly depends on your managerial style. Next thing is talk about the benefits, but it's not about, yes, we have a great perk because we have a ping pong table or, something like that. It's much more about the benefits of value to people with diverse backgrounds. So it would be, for example, like how much maternity leave you have, how much paternity leave do you have, and also possibilities like how many sabbaticals can they take. And then another thing is the recruitment process. And this is something that hasn't, you don't see often in job ads, but it's very important you write that down. Because we can say actually that when women are ready to send off the application, or when they've sent the application already, they identify with your company quite a lot already. Men tend to send out CVs and applications much faster and just try. It's on trial and error, where women, they really need to make sure that it's really worth applying, because they know that afterwards the whole recruitment process will be quite a hassle for them. So they only apply if they're quite sure that they want to really work at your company. And if they then send in the application and they don't hear from you for a month, that really cuts the trust they had in you as a company. So if you can describe the recruitment process in the job ad and say exactly, okay, you will hear from us after 2 weeks, and at the third step you will hear from us after 2 weeks again, that really builds up trust towards these female applicants. And yes, in the end, naturally, as any other job ad, you will put the contact. And here we really recommend that you do not put only the HR contact, but somebody from the team. And even great would be with a phone number, so that any potential applicant can actually call up that person from the team and ask, totally without obligation, hey, how is it to work with you in that team? So this is about the structure. And then also very importantly, women understand requirements really differently than men. And this is because of socialization. As women have been trained to be very meticulous, very diligent in their work, and boys have been socialized much more, men have been socialized much more about to be rough about everything they do, right? So women really feel that they have to cover 90 to 100% of the requirements of a job ad, where men actually apply if they cover 40 to 60% of the requirements. And you can see what this means in real life, right? If the man out of 7 requirements, the man covers 3, he will apply. Where a woman, she maybe covers 5, but she still doesn't apply because she doesn't cover 90 to 100%. So this is also the big question. If you put down a lot of requirements, are you actually getting the best applications? You're probably not, because women will exclude themselves. And as a last one, all these wording is interpreted very differently, as we mentioned before. There's wording like competitive wording and hard-hearted wording, rough wording, like all related to risk-taking. That is really deterring women from applying and only speaks to men, as well as stereotyped wording, meaning whenever it's, very STEM related or very leadership related, as I mentioned before. But also, you also need to think, whenever you're writing a job ad, is what kind of inner images are you provoking with the words that you are using? And here I come back to the question of the neutral linguistic. Is, for example, the word manager is linguistically seen neutral, but actually in male-dominated fields, let's say in finance, the inner image still is a man, because finance is male-dominated. Mostly men are working in this field, especially in the leadership position, and thus the inner image directly provoked a man in front of you. And this is why we should make sure that we somehow can neutralize this. And also, the word, as I mentioned before, specialist, is also male-coded. The inner image is of a specialist, as you saw in the riddle, is actually a man. That's why we have so much trouble in this riddle to interpret this differently. And yeah, so we go. There's manage of linguistic style as well. We have this superlative styling in language. For example, if you say we are looking for a ninja developer or for an IT crack, that's typically superlative language and will deter women. But also empty words like we work with a flat hierarchy. That's also, it's just an empty word. It's used so much in job ads that, you know, it's interpreted as being, oh, this is just blah, blah. And this now is not only in relation to, you know, empty words is not only deterring to women, but that's also deterring to young people, definitely. Good. So about horizontal change, that's the other change you can make, is actually where do you publish your job ad? Because what we see is that often companies tell us, oh, we can't find female talent. And then we ask them, well, are you working with headhunters? And they say yes. And then we ask them, well, what kind of networks do your headhunters have? And then you would see that even the network of the headhunters is probably quite male dominated. And that means, well, you know, you just find more of the same. Or, for example, if you're in an IT team and you ask your employees to give you referrals for new colleagues, for new candidates, they probably, you know, will contact the people they know from school. And naturally there, again, you will get more of the same. So you need to make this horizontal change also to explicitly go out of the comfort zone and look into other networks that you haven't tackled so far yet. And this is where Witty Works has developed a special job platform, a job portal, which is a niche job portal for women in STEM for whole Europe. And so far we have about 4,700 followers on social media and 550 job letter subscribers, you know, women that are explicitly looking for jobs in the STEM field. But now I hand back to Lukas, because what we want to do is to show you the Diversifier.Witty.Works, which is a tool that helps you in choosing the right language in job ads. Because even if you've heard it now for once, it doesn't mean, you know, that you can apply it just easily and so quickly. And also when what you heard, you're aware of it maybe now, but what about in 2 weeks? And that's why we developed a tool that helps you to do exactly that, to change your behavior when you are writing job ads. And now I give back to Lukas.
Yes, thank you. Nadia, can you open up your browser?
Yes, it's here.
But you need to also share, right? Did you click on the share button? Because I'm still seeing the slides.
Sorry, yeah. I think Maggie has to do. Oh no, I have to do that, right?
Yes. Yes. All right. So yeah, it's happening.
Oh, it's happening. Okay, cool.
All right. So here we see the diversifier. Nadia was already kind enough to log in with my account. So this is basically so the main area where people will work to create new job ads. So Nadia, can you maybe click on create? So this basically creates a new job ad. Here we see already you know, a bunch of fields. We support multiple languages for job ads. Currently, we support English, German, and French. You know, whenever you choose a different language, it automatically reanalyzes the text and adjusts the highlighting accordingly. Then underneath, you have several fields. So for example, here we have the job title. So as you can see, Nadia just erased the word controller and retyped it. And as soon as she finished typing it, it got highlighted. So this is what we call instant feedback. So as you type, you immediately get feedback about the wording that you're using. And then on the right side, if you, you know, if your cursor is on a word, it will show you some more details. So in this case, the term controller was highlighted. We have suggestions for alternatives. So for example, here we say instead of controller, which goes back to what Nadia was saying about this being the controller having this inner image of a male person, when you write it as controlling, then it becomes much more neutral. The other option, of course, is that you can at least list different genders afterwards. And as soon as you change the wording, then of course the highlighting goes away. By the way, if you do list genders like we have here in this example with F, star, and M, it is very helpful not to have the men first. So this is something that you often see. You have M/F, and we suggest to start with F, and then the star would be anybody that doesn't see themselves, is not gender binary, and sees themselves somewhere in the middle in the spectrum. All right, then next thing we have workload. Now here, in this case, we're highlighting the 100%. I think, yeah, mostly this is about most jobs can also be done part-time, and part-time is something that can really go a long way in opening up the talent pool again, to allow people to balance family and other hobbies as well. And again, this is something that doesn't just benefit women specifically. There's quite a few men that also care about family, that also care about hobbies, and where offering part-time can go a long way. Then you have additional fields for job location, role description, and really this template that we have here implements the best practices that Nadia was explaining. So we have the role description here. We see again words like ambitious, specialists are being highlighted. We have the word very being highlighted. And we also have the word care being highlighted. And this is an example of what we call a female coded word. And this actually is not a bad thing to have included in your job ads. And in fact, also, it doesn't deter men from applying. So it basically, again, just increases the talent pool that you're talking to. All right. Yeah, maybe also to mention on the side, well, Nadia already jumped over. Anyway, but it's fine. Like on the side, I just wanted to mention, we also show a tally. This can be useful, especially if you're not just writing directly on a tool. We also have an importer. So if you take a job ad from some other system and put it in here, you very quickly get an overview of the type of language that you're using and the issues that you might be creating. Nadia, maybe can you continue explaining a little bit more about the tool?
Yes, I think you've already explained a lot. But let's go maybe a little bit downwards to the requirements, because I talked so much about the requirements. As I said, as soon as there are too many requirements, actually you will deter female talent quite immediately. And you see this here applied. We have here marked with the star 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 requirements. And that's why we highlight it, because actually 6 requirements are already too many. So what you should do is, to come down to 4. And whenever you have more than 4, this is where we highlight it. What we've also heard from female talents and people with diverse backgrounds is that if there's a big enumeration of technological tools, they would have to satisfy, as well as methodological tools, then that is also something that is very deterring. And this is also something you see here highlighted in yellow. For example, for this Java engineer, there's naturally Java, but there's Java 8 and core Java, and there's Spring, and there's Boot, and there's Apache, and there's gbehave, and there's Cucumber. So there's a lot of different technological tools, frameworks that are requested, and that is definitely something that is very deterring. It used to be like 10, 15, 20 years ago that they would ask you for the whole Microsoft suite. This has kind of become a normal thing today. But even, just concentrate on the most important one, mention that, and with that way you make sure that everybody feels invited to apply. Exactly, that's what I wanted to add to this one. You see down here also that you can actually then add a company info, and I need to scroll up here to show you this one. because on the company infos, what we offer you with this tool is that you can put in here templates, because you maybe have, let's say, these different offices. Here is Australia and Zurich and Dubai, but per office you will have different job ads going out. So to make sure that you don't have to rewrite the office information every time again, you have a general template for your office information, for that company information of that office. And let me go into one of those. Here, Zurich office, for example, English. And here we've implemented again the structure that we propose to you. So we would, ask you first to describe the company as you would normally do, and then you will describe the company culture. As I said, this was very important. You would, in the next step, try goodies and benefit, and in the end, you describe the recruitment process. As I told you, this is very important. And so, with that company information, you can actually, all you have to change with every job ad is what we've shown you before, the role and the requirements, and the different offices. You can just describe once and reuse it over and over again. What you then also do is, with the tool, and that is included in our subscriptions, you see here the bottom review request, because the algorithm, is very good, but not as good as a human yet when it comes to language. So included in our subscriptions are always that you can review, that you can request reviews from real humans, professional copywriters. They will look at your text, at your job ad, and will give you tips and proposals of how you could even change more and more subtly in order to attract people with diverse backgrounds. Once you have your job ad ready, you can decide to publish it on jobs.witty.works, the job portal I told you before, if you think that matches the STEM field, and it gets directly published on that job portal. That's also included in any of our subscriptions. So, Lukas, did I forget anything?
Just maybe a small addition. We talked about requirements a lot, and we feel this is a very, very important part of the job ad. And one recommendation I can give is that sometimes things are written in as requirements, and this implies that you expect the candidate to already know these tools, but maybe all you wanted to communicate was that these are tools that are currently being used in the team. So we would suggest that you rather just make that part of the explanation of the day-to-day, where you say currently the team is using this tool or that tool, but you don't need to add it as a requirement, because in a way, if you're hiring a person and you think that they're going to be a good, for example, programmer, then it would be weird if you would assume that they couldn't learn, how to use a different editor for creating that code. So by implying that the specific code editor that the team is currently used is requirement, again, you're just making your talent pool a lot smaller.
Right. Good. Let's stop sharing our demo then.
Yes.
Okay, and we go back. Right. So what we want to offer for you, if you, certainly we'll have questions afterwards. But what we can offer you right now is to, in order to have your first learning effect, you can go to diversifier.witty.works and register and have there a 7-day free trial. So you can try out the Diversifier directly yourself. And then hopefully you like it. And, being here at WEConnect, we are happy to offer you a discount of 10% of any of our subscription, on any of our subscriptions, and that is valid until the end of May. So that was it for us from speaking, but we're happy to take any questions. We would love to have some questions. So yeah, go ahead.
Nadia and Lukas, thank you so much. You've covered a lot of ground, and as I said at the beginning, this is a topic that's very close to my heart. If you do have any questions, can you please use the chat functionality rather than coming off mute, because I know it knocks things out. I've got a couple of questions. I'm sorry if you covered this tonight and I didn't realize. Do you have example really great job adverts that people can look at, things that, or clients that you work with who've done some really good things that have been very successful in attracting more women to apply to it? And then just a second question around, are there specific places where women look for jobs that guys don't? I mean, I know you mentioned about, choosing, don't necessarily just choose all your same channels and don't necessarily just ask, the same people to kind of promote the jobs on LinkedIn, but are you aware of channels that women look at more? Anyway, there's two questions for me as a starter.
Yeah, Lukas, or you have?
Yeah, sure. I can maybe start. So some examples. Go to jobs.witty.works. So these are all job ads that have gone through using the Diversifier as well as the copywriting. So these job ads, basically have all the best practices implemented. And maybe for networks, so the first thing that Nadia mentioned is that asking your current non-diverse employee base to find you diverse candidates, or to go to headhunters that don't have diverse talent pools in their database will not get you there. So again, it's very important that you specifically take an extra effort to find niche portals like jobs.witty.works, that you challenge headhunters that they need to show you that they do have a diverse talent pool within their network, and that you don't work with them unless they do. And so this is really important as well, because by using these other channels, by making this a priority, that's also sending a message to these candidates.
Yeah, and I would add here as well that on social media, there's many communities in the different fields that are particularly female communities. Like there's lots of, as you know yourself, there's like women in tech in the UK. There's also women in mobility in Switzerland, for example. There's also the LGBT job portal. So there are many job portals and social media communities out there that really are diverse, or with a diverse background, and you need to take the effort in order to find those, and then really follow them, try to engage with them, and then that's how you build up your diverse talent pool as well.
Absolutely, and I know that this definitely takes time, and for if you're doing a lot of hiring in this space, you need to build relationships with really brilliant female talent. So there's a couple of questions that have come in on the chat then. We've got one around whether the algorithm for the Diversifier bias free, think that's tricky. Sorry, I haven't quite understood that question, so I'm going to jump to the next one and I'll come back to that. Ken is asking around the word or the job title financial controller as a male word. Are you suggesting that we change job titles? I don't know if you guys can see that on the chat box as well, Nadia and Lukas.
Sorry, which one again?
It's the second one about the changing of job titles from financial controller.
Ah, yes, exactly. Yes, so this question gets asked a lot. I know this is quite new, and that's why people have trouble accepting it. But I can tell you that even Google starts to write their job ads, instead of saying developer, so like software developer, they would start saying software development. We are looking for someone in software development or in backend development and so forth. It just this kind of neutralization of the term. Yes, it's not a traditional job title as we would traditionally perceive it, but actually it doesn't matter so much. If you in your job ad neutralize it and write financial controlling, anybody on the anybody out on the job search understands directly that you are looking for somebody in financial controlling. So the title in itself is really not so important. That it says controller. Controlling is totally fine and gets accepted. If you worry about SEO, if you do a lot of SEO, not of all the companies, feel that this is so important. But if you think it's really important, maybe you want to look at those results. What difference does it make writing down financial controlling or controller? And if you see that really controller is more important, then at least, try to write it down as financial controller and in the brackets female, diverse, and male, to make sure that the F comes first, so that the inner image first for the women is also a woman, and for the diverse people the second, and then only at the end the male. So we really try to retrain the brain by using language. I hope that was fine.
Yeah, that's great, and I hope that answers the question. Please, you also have Nadia and Lucas's contact details on the screen, so you can please feel free to contact them directly. So we've got a question then from one of our WDs in South Africa about how are the male coded words. I guess two around whether there's current trends, and then a secondary one around whether they work globally, or whether at the moment this is more focused on a European market, and would it work within the African market as well?
Yeah. So what would these words all come out from a study that was first done in the United States, and then there was another study done in Europe, in German, and there's also one in Chinese. And they all actually confirmed the first results that were found in the American study, in the US American study. And naturally, for example, in French, there aren't such studies yet. But what we did is really we take the stem of words that we had from the American study and first translated those into German and into French. And we are continuously enlarging that word pool, because as the other WEB says, it develops, right? Language develops. So what we can say that at least in English, German, and French, it works for the language, but you're totally right. I'm not totally sure that we can say that every word in English gets interpreted in the same way in the United States as in the UK, as in India, as in an English-speaking country in Africa. So we haven't tested for every country. We see that at least for English-speaking and German-speaking and French-speaking, it works really well. Because, as I said, it's not only about the words, it's also about the structure and the whole perception that you have of the job ad. So it's an entire experience of the job ad, and not only of single words. Right.
Amazing, thank you. I don't know if there's any more questions that have come through on the chat, but I know that there was a couple of questions that have been asked in advance, and I think we've covered most of the topics around, there's two things around encouraging, having a brilliant job advert that will encourage women to apply, and then actually encouraging more women to apply generally. But one of the questions around when you've got really very technical jobs, whether that is in technology or manufacturing or engineering, are there any other top tips you can share around for those very deeply technical roles to encourage more women to apply, or any additional advice for very deeply technical roles?
Maybe I can say one thing. So that one of the key things that we keep hearing, of course, is that, well, we're not getting the applicants, not because of our job ads, not because of our website, just they don't exist. So that's something that is often said, like the pipeline is the problem. And like we've shown, or that's one of the reasons why actually we created this niche job portal to begin with, to basically show that maybe it's just who you're asking or who you're talking to that's the problem. And again, the results we see from the rewriting of the job ads is that the people do exist, And of course, the representation in the different fields is also not 50-50 yet, because the socialization also leads to different job choices, different education choices. But the thing is, if your company is a first mover in phrasing differently, there is sufficient talent with diverse background that will flock to your company and that will give your company a competitive edge. Because at the end of the day, if you're the first, then you're talking to maybe just, even if in that field there are only 15% women or 20% women, if you're the company that speaks to them the most, then you have actually an opportunity to very easily be able to hire 50% or more people with diverse background.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. I mean, this is an incredibly important topic. You know, I know this is, you know, really about technical jobs, but for all things. So I'm getting lots of comments saying, thank you very much. Great session. Very informative. Thank you for sharing. This is, thank you to everybody, and a very interesting and stimulating presentation and discussion. Any final questions? I think we're maybe there, but as Witty Works have offered, there is a 10% discount code until, I think Nadia said until the end of yes, and that you can try. It means you can then try it out for 7 days anyway, and then there's a discount code that you can use until the end of May. Nadia and Lucas's contact details are there, so please do feel free to share this with colleagues or other people you know who are hiring staff in the technical space. I think this is an incredibly important area of recruitment to be aware of, and that you actually have to work hard, you know, to make sure that you do improve, and it isn't simply a case of saying, oh, nobody applied. It's not the case. There are some brilliant women working in the tech and the STEM industry. So thank you very much. I'm going to close the session there, but Lukas and Nadia, thank you for sharing this. Very much appreciate it, and we'll be able to follow up with everybody. And if you, thank you to all of those who joined live, and to all of those who were listening to the recording and have got to this point. So thank you for that. I wish you all a brilliant rest of your day. And please don't hesitate to get in touch with WEConnect International if there's anything that we can support you with. But Nadia and Lukas, thank you very much again. I will look forward, hopefully, to finding out that some of the participants today have been able to increase the number of female candidates that they have successfully applying for their jobs. But thank you very much, everybody, and have a brilliant rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.